To Alliance, Ohio. It is not Central Florida, that's for sure, although I have opted for jacket off for our show today, and that's because the weather is actually reasonable for this Game Day Live episode. This may change when I get to the sidelines later, as the wind is a little brisk, but it is supposed to get around 42 degrees here today, JB, which might be slightly cooler than it is where you are in Central Florida.
Yeah, just a little bit. And looking over your left shoulder, I can see the flags are blowing at a pretty good clip, so it does look pretty windy. We've also seen from the ESPN live Secretary's Cup preview that you are pretty good at fielding punts. So if you happen to get one, in your direction, Frank, just be ready to catch that. Looks like they're sending them your way. It looks like a beautiful day in Ohio, man. I mean, no snow. Yep, no bad weather, so definitely good weather for teams that like to throw the ball like the Mules and the Raiders do.
So earlier, before we went on, that number 5 that's standing there, I believe that's Thomas Jenkins, if I'm not incorrect here, decided he wanted to send a message to you, which was what exactly, JB?
Keep on picking against us, JB. We love it. So I gave him the thumbs up. I was like, "Hey, man, yeah, that's the right attitude. Like, bring it. Prove me wrong, man. That's the best thing to do."
Stream is hanging a little bit here, so we hope that you're on your end, folks, able to see us okay. Might restart and drop to a lower standard if need be here, but we do have a little preview of what's going on here in Division 3 this afternoon. And JB, we should probably talk about how we got here in the first place a little bit. And I'm going to entrust you with those duties, and then we'll talk about the games that will be played. But first off, from those that might have missed crunch time, tell us what happened last weekend.
Well, basically, if you go from the upper left-hand corner of the bracket, Linfield defeated number 1 St. John's 31-28. Wyatt Smith had about 270 three and was able to lead his team to a tough victory. And the Wildcats have from going back to when they won the national title in 2004, and they're going to have to do it again today as they have a tough matchup against UMHB down in Texas. The Crusaders won 42-7. That game was close for a little while until a certain guy named Jefferson Fritz, who's a semifinalist for the Ghilardi Trophy. We're going to see a lot of those Ghilardi Trophy semifinalists today, Frank. Wyatt Smith is one I just mentioned. We also have Jefferson Fritz, the safety for UMHB, who's in that same category. He had a key interception, which led the Crusaders to a touchdown to give them a 27-7 lead. They never looked back. On the other side, or the lower side of that bracket, Whitewater, they've had a pretty easy go so far. They've beaten both of their opponents by like 115-7 at this point. They shut out DePaul, Alex Pete, 209 rushing yards on 14 carries, almost unheard of, 4 rushing touchdowns. Max Ghilardi, semifinalist, passing touchdown. Exciting game on this side of the was Central had to drive about 65 yards in 2 minutes and 37 seconds to defeat the favored Wheaton, even though Wheaton was the road team. In the national rankings, the Thunder were higher rated than the Dutch. But, hey, Blaine Hawkins, who I think is going to win the Ghilardi Trophy, that's my 2 cents. He has a chance today to set the NCAA record for most passing touchdowns in a season. That's not just for Division III, folks. It's for the entire NCAA. Ironically, he's tied right now with Linfield grad and current coach Brett Elliott, who was another amazing quarterback in D3 about a decade or so ago. And, Hawkins has a chance to do something unique today. And, he'll have a tall order against the defense as strong as the Warhawks, but it'll be interesting to see how that game goes in about 2 hours from now. On the other side of the bracket, we jump to the right or the east side. North Central took La Crosse 34-20. Efield, another Ghilardi arguably the best player in Division III. Even though I made that prediction about the Hawkins, thing, he's pretty amazing. 30 rushes, 198 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns in a 34-20 victory over La Crosse. RPI Cortland, that's a game that, a lot of us East Region guys like myself will be keeping an eye on. They take on North Central today. It's going to be a tall order for the Engineers, but this team just somehow with these 50 some odd seniors keep finding ways to win and hang around. Dylan Burnett hadn't really had a lot of stats this whole season until the last 2 weeks. And, he had a 32 rush, 155-yard game and a touchdown, basically the game-winning touchdown to put the Engineers here into the Elite Eight for the second time in 3 seasons. Pretty impressive run there. And, Breeze Sagala, another Gallardi semifinalist for Cortland, just there in the end, amazing career, and coach at Cortland for. Now we're leading to this game, which is really the main event for at least from the noon to 1 o'clock Eastern time frame. Mountain Union beat Johns Hopkins, which was a team from the same conference as Muhlenberg. They lost by 10. You mentioned it on our Crunch Time show, Frank. 3 interceptions by quarterback Ryan Stevens might have been the difference here, but Braxton Plunk, he's a Florida guy like me. He's from Plant, near Tampa. He's like the Tom Brady of D3. 21 of 36, 256 yards, 4 passing touchdowns. I mean, this guy can really sling the ball. But ultimately, I think this game, Frank, it's going to come down to how the Mules do with these sort of double threat, maybe thunder and lightning running attack of Petruccelli and Anderson, I think is the other running back's name. But Muhlenberg got here same way they got to the before two seasons cutouts in the first 2 rounds. Michael quarterback, I feel like a broken record. 23 of 39, 256 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. The Mules defense basically shut out Del Val for the entire game. Anytime they came close to the end zone, the Mules shut them down and did not allow them to score. So that's how we got here, Frank. We've got the final Elite 8 teams in the nation, and it's going to be a great day of 4 games here in D3 football.
So, JB, I had a chance to talk to Nate Milne, who found me over here in my little corner. I thought it was out of harm's way. All these coaches, wouldn't find me and everything. Some fans have already razzed me about my quick hits pick here. So, it is what it is. But, hey, like I said, I'm paid to be wrong, assuming we're even paid for this duty we do. We aren't. But Nate Milne stopped by, and, one thing a lot of people forget, JB, is that this Muhlenberg team and many of the players that are going to be on the field today played against Mount Union on December 1st, 2018. And so they learned a lot in that loss. It was about a 4-touchdown loss, give or take, in that game. And, we reflected on those kinds of thoughts and issues with Coach, and here we go. Coach, nice weather we're having here for one thing, and I think a lot of people expected maybe a freeze out or something, and something might affect the game. You got to be used to this kind of weather for a playoff game.
It's a beautiful day in Alliance today. Happy our team is here, and it shouldn't be any headline today with the weather. I think you're going to get a legitimate game out here by 2 really good football programs. So I don't think there'll be any headlines about this team playing better in this weather or nothing, anything like that.
You guys were out here, was it December 1st, 2018, I want to say. It didn't go your way by about 4 touchdowns, I think, give or take. What did you learn, and what did this team learn from that experience that's going to become valuable for today?
I think it's been a process for us. Number one, to compare ourselves against one of the blue bloods of college football, to see where we needed to recruit, to see maybe where they overwhelmed us a little bit in that game, and then just to be ready for games and moments like this. I don't want to say that we were underprepared that day, but your first trip to Alliance doesn't go well for most teams. And so I think just maturity level, building our program to where we want to be, and maybe to get to where some of those national powers are. I think our players are a little bit ready, and our team is maybe built a little bit differently than we were in 2018. And certainly the experience of our quarterback. As he goes, we go offensively. Defensively, we're so deep that we present challenges to a lot of opponents, and we'll see how today goes.
You love when I bring it up, and this is the time of year when it matters, I think, the most. We talked about it with the RPI guys about North Central. The line play, the line size on both sides of the ball is where this is going to be won or lost in a lot of occasions. You know, everybody's got a good specialist out there, and receivers, quarterbacks, but the line. Tell me about the importance of it and how these guys have grown since your sign is lost.
Yeah, I think we've had a couple of injuries on the defensive line, and so that's allowed us to build our depth. Guys who maybe wouldn't have been playing week 5 and 6 they were forced into roles, and they performed very well, and so that allowed us to again build there. And so we're good going 5 or 6 or 7 deep on the defensive line, and again we've had 9 different offensive linemen start football games this season, and so anything happens, and we know those guys are ready, and we knew that those guys were talented, but as Malcolm Gladwell and a couple of people talk about the 10,000 hour rule. These guys are just starting to get those hours underneath their belt to understand leverage of linebackers, leverage of safeties, hand placement, all of those little nuanced things they're starting to get. We'll see if it's good enough. The good news is, again, they're getting better. They are talented, and we'll return 4 or 5 of those guys next year and continue to build for the future of this program.
I look at your road here, and it was after the first round, you have travel to basically Del Val, then travel to Alliance, Ohio against Mount Union, then possibly, if you get through today, travel to North Central, assuming that they can take care of RPI. You never know in playoffs. But there's a coach out west that was complaining about the road that an East team faces, especially when they're on the road, compared to some of the West bracket teams. What's your response to that with what your team's having to face here?
I don't know about anybody else's road. For us, going to Del Val was a short trip for us, so that was not a problem. This was a little bit longer, but I don't think, I don't know what suggestions I would have, so I don't know if there's really much to say kind of about that.
But the teams you're facing are high quality, would you not disagree?
I mean, Delaware Valley are the #1 defense in the country, and I mean, we'll find out today comparatively, and maybe 6-7 hours from now, I'll have a better gauge as to which defense provided more problems for us. I don't know if anybody can say that coming to Mount Union is an easier road than somewhere else. I mean, to me, that's I don't know. That's almost a slap in the face to Mount Union a little bit to say that this is not a difficult place to play. I mean,
the machine is right over there.
Yeah,
welcome to the machine.
I think North Central and Rowan and 02 or 03 or something were the last 2 teams to win here. So I don't think that's. I mean, we'll find out here in a couple of hours, but I don't really think there's an easy path anywhere to a national championship.
What's the last things you're going to say to the guys before they come out of the locker room for this game?
Enjoy the moment. Each and every time we have an opportunity like this, and we view this as a wonderful opportunity to test ourselves against the blue bloods of college football and to see if we've closed that gap from 2018 and 2019. And they should have a ton of fun. Play with confidence. We're a good football team. And so to play with a lot of confidence today and to relax. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. We talk about taking that one deep breath and recentering and refocusing yourself and making sure that you're mentally prepared for that next play.
Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, folks, as we get our audio squared away here, enjoy the moment. JV, that's his advice to his players here. And, you know, he has the experience from a few years ago to share that with them. That was an interesting year for the Mules. This is an interesting year for the Mules in a lot of different ways now that we've gone through COVID and whatnot. And this is a school, a football team that has the RPI effect that you'd like to point to, the super seniors and the seniors, and then the 2 classes that didn't have much experience, and trying to meld that differential together has been a challenge for some coaches, but Milne has done a good job at it.
Well, absolutely, and it's always a team effort in football, and I'm sure that Coach Milne is leaned on coordinators like Corey David, who runs the defense. They balance, and they're juggling a lot of different things going on here because the Centennial Conference has been a gauntlet this year. We've seen it in person. We kind of gave the Region 2 RAC a little bit of a razz early on, but the way the playoffs have panned out, them rating Hopkins and Muhlenberg so high seems justified based on their performance. They passed, and the eye test goes. Union isn't exactly the last. They seem to be flawed in certain cases. I mean, they're excellent in many spots, but they aren't shutting teams out all the time. Hopkins gave them a good run, and the Mules beat Hopkins by a couple of touchdowns. So, we like to joke around about the laws of syllogism and all that kind of stuff on our show. But if I'm a Mule player, like, hey, why not? We can potentially win this game. But then again, there's also this Mount Union effect. We've seen a lot of great teams come to Ohio and just basically die on the field before the ball is even kicked off, and they lose the game before anything even happens. So I trust that Coach Milne has these guys focused, has them ready to go. But the Raiders have only lost 2 games at home in the playoffs in 23 years, and we'll see. We'll have to see what happens.
On the flip side here, Coach Jeff Dart has decided to coach from the sideline over the last weeks. Remember when I was at Westminster, we had broken a little bit of the information, I wouldn't call it news necessarily, that he was coaching from the press box, and he had done so in the spring as well. And a lot of people questioned whether or not, that was something that should be happening. And it may have worked for him, but eventually he decided that coaching from the sideline is the better idea. Do you fault him for coming down from the press box if he was comfortable up there, even as head coach?
No, and I think with a game, with these kind of stakes, you probably want to be front and center players. I mean, even though deal happened in the springtime season, and while in many cases the Raiders have had some extra reps, they've also probably had a couple of extra injuries, a couple of extra ups and downs that the Mules haven't had to deal with because they did not play in the spring.
Yeah, interesting point there. 20 games in a calendar year is unheard of, obviously. This is game number 13 for Mount Union at the 5 games from the spring. So technically, I think 18 or actually 17 because they may have missed the game that didn't get rescheduled. But they're going to be close to 20 games if they get to the Stag Bowl this year, and that's a big if with what's on their side of the bracket. So again, here, JB, that question to
You know, at this stage, every road to the going to St. John's. I mean, I feel, was it a tough game? Yeah, but was that any tougher than Muhlenberg going to Del Valle? I don't know. I don't think so. We'll see how they. I think really felt the Cardinals were going to lose that game, and then here, sort of the breakdown. Undefeated Empire 8 champions, SUNY Cortland. They made a good run. This season, Rensselaer, aka RPI, somehow though keeps finding ways to win these close games. Can their defense, which to their credit is pretty stout. It's made up of mostly 22 and 23-year-old young men. These aren't college kids anymore. These are young adults that are they're going to be tested by the athleticism of the defending champions, but we'll have to see how that game shakes out, and I'm hoping that RPI can acquit themselves kind of like Del Valle did 2 years ago.
And just fixing something on our side here. We'll get right back to you in a second here, folks. But a little wind, and it's wreaking a little havoc on our equipment, but you can see, as we change a little angle there too, you can see the overhang there of where Mount Union fans will be sitting for most of this game, the covered area, which actually, I don't know if that's a benefit to be under that area today, JB, because the wind and everything, I'd rather be in the sunlight where it is a little bit warmer, I got to be honest. But, one of the things that I was pointing out to our friend Lenny Reich when I saw him in the press box, Mount Union setup is backward compared to most teams, most stadiums and whatnot. as most of the time the press box side is the home side, and the home fans also on that side. In the case of Mount Union, it's backward across the field from the main stands and press box is where the home fans sit, and that's why the team puts their sideline on the same side. So it's interesting. I have not been here in 10 years. Last time was the Bethel semifinal in 2011 that I was here at Mount Union, and the area different than what I remember. It was kind of sleepy. Towns
I mean, Larry Karras started it and built this thing into a national powerhouse starting in the late 90s, and so it's no surprise that 20 years later, after being on ESPN every year, that the money has followed. It's just an impressive country. I don't think you could have had a Mount Union type of situation anywhere in the country. That there had to be certain ingredients. This type develop and has really been, the standard that a lot of other Division III schools have tried to copy as well. Mount Union was it was sort of the original, recipe standard barrier, and today they're obviously a favorite in this game, just based on that track record. They've just been so good for so long. It's just sort of part of the winning formula they have there.
Yeah, they call it the machine for a reason, and we're just starting to get revved up again after a couple days of major excitement at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Benson Stadium. Don't forget what they
played how many games so far this year? Is there 12-0?
and then maybe I shook you into the Linfield Mary Hardin Baylor perspective a little bit, but all four of these games had the potential, and the potential can play your other team into the fourth quarter within a possession, and you can win that game. You know how to win those games in most cases.
Well, basically, kind of what they did against Del Val. They have to keep the Raiders defensive line off their quarterback, which they did pretty well. I mean, Nobile and company from Del Val, several All-Americans on that Aggie squad. Certainly as strong as we'll see from Mount Union. I mean, and we talked to Cordell Ford in the spring season. He's kind of like a rover safety type. They may try and blitz him here and there. Maybe try and disguise some coverages to throw off Nikowski, but ultimately, I'm going to come down to the image, like Coach Milne here. If the Mules line can hold super fast Raiders defense at bay, at least give Nikowski some time to throw the ball, look downfield, get a few running plays. He has plenty of time when he's back there. And ultimately, though, I would have to say the biggest challenge facing Muhlenberg is going to be figuring out how to cover Wayne Ruby. He's probably the fastest receiver in Division III right now. That guy has some wheels on him that's just next level stuff. So if he catches the ball in open field, forget it. You're not going to catch him. We saw that against Hopkins. He just outruns everybody. So the Mules, Corey David, the defensive coordinator, is going to have to come up with some plans to maybe chip him at the line, slow him down, and if he does somehow break open, to tackle him as soon as possible. If he has room to run, forget it.
Well, as we come to a close here, we are going to talk about coverage here for the rest of the day. And Pat Coleman is going to be in Perkins Stadium with the Wisconsin Whitewater Central game. He'll be covering for D3Football.com. Obviously, I'll be covering via Twitter this game, which is, and there we go again. See that wind I talked about? It's taking everything down with us, so it could affect the kicking game to a degree. You think just bleeps and things are the difficulties we have around here? Well, that's not the case. Yep. So we'll change shots for a moment there.
Yeah.
But my point being that I'll be covering this via Twitter for us here in Alliance, Ohio, and we'll have some post-game analysis or at least interviews and whatnot after the game as well. Not too much press here, so we may not have formal conferences. We might get an opportunity for some one-on-one discussions later on today for the winning team, especially, as you know how we roll here, and then post stuff up on Twitter either Sunday or Monday. The other two games you may have to kind of watch on your own, but I'm sure JB is going to give you some Twitter activity for the RPI North Central game and the Whitewater game. That's Pat, the Mary Hardin Baylor hosting Linfield game, and that is a battle of top 10 teams. In fact, if you look at the entirety of the bracket, I believe Central landed right around number 10, if I remember correctly. So we do have basically 4 teams in the top 10 on the left side. So now giving Joe Smith back a little bit of credibility on his statement, there are a lot of top 10 teams remaining on the left side of the bracket. On the right side, it's, as we say here on the screen, number 15 Muhlenberg at number 4 Mount Union. And RPI, I think, was just barely cracking the top 25 at the end of the season versus number 1 North Central. So actually they made it to 18th. I didn't remember they got that high. So 18 versus 1 also. But again, anything can happen. Any changes in your predictions, thoughts, or anything from our Friday show? Have you regretted anything that we've said along the way?
And some Mueller is giving me a hard time for my Raiders pick. I mean, this like I said before, this game to me feels like, if there is going to be an upset in this round of the playoffs, I feel like this is the one game where it could potentially happen. All due respect to Linfield, I just don't think they have the size to hang with Mary Hardin Baylor. They can also prove me wrong today because they got it done against St. John's, which isn't exactly a pushover kind of team, but I feel like out of these four matchups, this is the one that not necessarily favors the road underdog, but gives them a chance to, like you said, if they can keep it close going into the fourth quarter, there could be an opportunity for an upset. We'll see.
Yeah, this is for all the teams. The challenge today, all the teams that may be a little bit lower in the rankings or the upset possibilities that are out there, keep it close and find a way to win in the fourth quarter. I don't see any team necessarily, except for maybe Whitewater, at least in my assessments, running away with a game. And then I've seen a lot of other people say, hey, Central's going to win that game. So, when you average it all out, these all become coin tosses in some way, shape, or form, with maybe the exception of the RPI North Central game. But, they've been living by the sword, dying by the sword, well, pretty much living by the sword the entire season, with the exception of that Hobart game, which, let's go back to that for 1 second while we have a couple minutes here. We were aiming to go to 11:45, got a few minutes to kill here. What did Hobart do to beat that team? Because, JB, nobody's been able to replicate it since. What did Hobart do? I know you watched that game closely, to beat RPI.
Well, it was a combination of defensive pressure up front. The Statesman sacked Marianopolis 5 or 6 times in that game. Emmett Ford, who was a preseason All-American going into this year. We'll see if he gets the same kind of recognition. I know I had him way up on my all-region ballot as a linebacker. He was able to backstrap things. Had an impact on teams. The ball, so it was sort of a one-dimensional offensive game plan for them. I don't know what the weather is going to be like in Chicago. If it's like what it is here in Ohio, a little wind might affect the pass here and there, but for the most part, RPI is going to just have to try and bring the pressure to lane in the North Central quarterback, and on the flip side, that RPI offensive line is going to have to do a good job of keeping the pressure off Marianopolis, because if he has some time, he's not necessarily the most mobile guy, but he, smart, knows how to find open receivers, can throw the ball with efficiency when he has time. So ultimately, RPI, will have to hope their offensive line can give Marianopolis a little bit of time to find players like Vinny McDonald and others out there in the receiving corps.
Got our camera fixed there to be able to show you also, if you're wondering what the crowd size could be here today, it's about 18 minutes or 20 minutes before kickoff here. The Mount Union side, the quote-unquote home side, is pretty sparse, and there's not exactly, I'm also facing the ticket booth area. It's not what I would call people teaming to get in here yet, and now obviously with the cold weather, maybe they're going to be a little slower to get in here, but it's not exactly just running in. Yeah. And on the visiting side, a little bit of a contingent, nothing major. So I have a feeling we're going to have a sparse-ish crowd today. Maybe this picks up over the next 20 minutes. I don't know. But not just teaming to get in here. Looking at the pep band, I also wonder, we've got to be in finals or exams for the students if they're here at all at this point. And for the most part, I think they are still. But that makes it challenging, too, to get the student body in for a game like this. And look, JB, when you're Mount Union, it's the third round. It's the quarterfinals. Do you draw the excitement level when it's a game that you're expected to win every year? I remember when Union won the Division I hockey championship, And ever since then, it's kind of an expectation that they'll go to the Frozen Four, and the crowds have been a little bit less ever since then. You know, do you become a victim of your own success in terms of getting your students and your fans to back a game that's, let's say, first, second, third round playoff game? I wonder, and we'll see if the fan base does show up in mass here over the next 20 minutes or so. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, we don't have a camera on the parking lot, and there could still be a lot of tailgaters out there trying to enjoy an adult beverage or two before they, you know, get in. But yeah, you know, like you said, Frank, I mean, this program has been so strong for so long that, yeah, I mean, a third round exit is not something that the Purple Radar, you know, season ticket holders are expecting. So there might be a late crowd showing up, or maybe they'll wait and sort of see how the first quarter goes. I mean, you're being an Ironman out there with no jacket and anything, but it's still 30 degrees and windy probably. So, not exactly comfort weather, but hey, I'm pretty hopefully, and if maybe it's a good thing for.
Can you see? I don't think you can see it from there, but 42 degrees is what it says. Alliance, 42? Ohio. 42.
Okay, balmy 42. Nice.
Getting up to 45, JB. I mean, come on now. Compared to Cortland, where it was snowy and 32 last week, this is a dream come true. I mean, that was bad last week, and I had no feeling in my hands. Let me just be clear about that by the end of that game.
Okay.
But, yep. Any final thoughts to our viewers out there as we close out?
Well, I mean, this is going to be probably the last, sort of big weekend of college football. I mean, we got 4 games here today. Next week it's obviously going to be, half that. And there are a couple games today that could go either way. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Linfield could prove me wrong. Muhlenberg could prove me wrong. I feel pretty good about the chances for North Central and Whitewater just based on their track record. I feel like they are on a rematch in the Stag Bowl. But who knows what any given Saturday. So it's great that this one, the national stage for a complete hour before those other 3 games kick off. And so we'll be able to focus in on this.